1A. I forgot.
This meeting is being recorded.
It's Public Administration 1A. So we're gonna start by introducing.
Yes, we are recording everything.
Okay. So we're gonna start by introducing the public administration. What is public administration, and some topics that are found in the introduction of public administration A. So as soon as we finish, I'll also give you some of the questions. I picked some past exam questions that are relevant to this introduction that I've also found Mancosa. You've been asking those questions, so I just picked a few. Maybe it's about, I think it's about 30 marks. But first and foremost, we're gonna discuss what is public administration, how it came to be, and the challenges that public administration is facing. So I just jotted some of the points here, like let's say historically, public administration was concerned with administrative activities, but that was in the past. So it was concerned with public administrative activities necessary to allow governance and the administrative requirements necessary to carry out governmental policies. But as time goes on, there emerged what was called a state. A state, according to the Weberian theory, it emerged through what was called bureaucracy. I'm going to explain bit by bit. So we're going to see how we're going to help each other. So if you can see on my screen, I highlighted these words: governance. These are the major words that we also need to first understand, because we can't learn what public administration is all about if we don't understand what governance is about. Then I also highlighted these policies. Then I also highlighted state. Then I highlighted the Weber's theory. This is Max Weber theory. Then bureaucracy. Then there are some other also words that are down there. If I'm gonna scroll down, but I'll go back to here. So it was concerned with the governance, but with time, people realized that public administration can no longer remain as an issue of governance by the state only, because historically it was just focused with the state being the one that was the sole provider of public administration. But what is public administration? Public administration is the administration of public services, or the distribution of public services to the public, but using the resources that are provided by the nation or provided by the state. Then the state itself, the word state usually is the one that is most appropriate to use in public administration. You don't have to use a nation or a country. You can use it, but nation or a country is a layman's word. But if you are a public administration student, you need to, most of the time, to use the word state. So the state was now developed through what was called Weber's theory. Weber is the one who first came up with the issue of state, because he said that the government must be the one that should be responsible for distributing the resources to the people. But with time, things changed. Things changed, and right now we can talk about the new public administration, which has become the new management system of public administration. So that system was changed because it was seen as being forceful, because it did not it did not consult the public. Was the word bureaucracy itself? It's a means that the state officers are the ones that make decisions on behalf of the public, which means they do not consult the public, they do not consult the people, they just make decisions. If the decisions are bad, it means the administration of the public resources is also bad. So the theory itself at first seemed to be good, because before then there was nothing which was called public administration. But as times went on, you can see on my point, I also pointed the contemporary state has changed. So as times went on, the public administration changed, the state itself changed. The state changed from nationalization, privatization, outsourcing, contracting, and many other things changed. So this now we have a contemporary word means just modern state, which means the things that was forceful, that used to be done by the people who were deciding for the majority. It's no longer like that. It's now a democratic issue where the people are allowed to make decisions. They are allowed to participate in decision making, particularly with public administration. But as we check the South African history, we know that South Africa was once colonized. And during the apartheid era, the public administration that was in South Africa used to favor the whites. It was only the white areas where people, the white places where people were living, that were developed. But if you go to the black townships, there were a lot of challenges. There were no electricity, there were no water, there were no sanitation, a lot of challenges. But all the necessary public administration activities were centered on whites. So with the change in South Africa of the public administration, the coming in of the elected government, democratic government in 1994, ushered in a new trajectory of public administration in South Africa. There was a craft of what was called the Bill of Rights in South Africa. The government crafted a Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights was simply meant to try to balance, to readdress the imbalance that existed between the South African population. But even right now, we can still see that the challenges are still there. The white population is still, mostly still the one that are still enjoying the system that is there. But with time, we know that things are going to change. But as of now, present or as of now, we still have some challenges of inequality. So the inequalities that we have, these challenges are regarded as the triple challenges, which is poverty, inequality, and employment. And currently, the official employment rate in South Africa is 34.9%. And this is a statistic that I took from the third quarter of 2021. But the South African government is still trying to change the status quo of this of the public administration. They also crafted some policies that are like the national development policies that have been designed. But from this, just this portion that we have explained, that I just discussed about, I spoke about the word governance. I also mentioned that there is a word of policies historically, and I also mentioned the word state, Weber's theory, and bureaucracy. So these are some of the words that I think you also need to know when you are doing public administration A. I highlighted these words because after I've seen some past exam papers where they actually asked the students to define what governance means, what policies means, what state means, Weber's theory, and bureaucracy. So governance simply means that there is a control of the control by a political entity of the resources that are in a state. That's what governance simply means. It's a control of resources by a political entity, of resources, so that they benefit the people or the population in that country. Then the word policies, the government policies, you're gonna find this word, you're gonna encounter this word a lot as you will be studying public administration. Policies simply mean these are guidelines or controls or protocols that are designed to control rational decision making by the people who have the mandate and who have the responsibility to make policies. So it simply means that there are guidelines or controls that are in place. But in some instances, these people can make bad policies. For example, the policies that we can talk about welfare policies, financial welfare policies. But the financial welfare policies can be bad. Then the word state, what does the word state mean? The word state also means it's a political entity which is sovereign authority over a territory or a given place. So I also discovered that there is also a question paper. I think I put the question down there. I should have put it up here. But the question was asking about the characteristics of a state. So when you talk about a state, the definition of a state it's part of the characteristics of a state. Because a state is got characteristics of a territory. It is also sovereignty. It is population. It is governance. It is also systems of law. There are many characteristics. I think some goes up to 8. But in this Mancosa module, you have they give only about 4 characteristics, of which are also, you must know them. That is about territory. The territory simply means that it's the border that governs, that the state has authority over. So it's a geographical place or geographical mandate that it can cover. Like here in South Africa, you have provinces, Limpopo, Eastern Cape, and so forth. Those are the provinces that can be incorporated as part of the states of which South African government is a mandate or a responsibility over. Then the Weber's theory is a theory that it was just a theory that was made on bureaucracy. Because this theory simply means that the government is the one that it perceives that the government is the one that has the duty and the effective responsibility of running public administration. But there are many disagreements with this theory. Because some say that if the government is given the sole mandate of running the government, if they make bad calls, bad policies, bad choices, they simply affect the majority. So they must not have the overall mandate of running the state. So I will just go down here and see where I got this question. So this is question 2, if you can see properly. This is question 2 from a supplement, the supplementary examination on 20th June 2018. So I adapted it from Mancosa. This is Mancosa question. So they say define the following concept. So from what we discussed above, there was no transparency, but I also included transparency because it was there. Because the government or a state must be something, must be a state that does its thing transparently so that everyone does not question what is happening. The external stakeholders, like the public, must be satisfied with how things have been run or been done by a government. So that was transparency is all about. Then state, I explained earlier about what a state is. A state is a political entity with sovereign authority over a given territory, population. For example, South Africa, it's also a state. So South Africa is a state. Then the policies, the definition that is here is that policy is a purposeful set of guidelines designed to guide decision making and produce rational outcomes. So in other ways, it's a protocol that should be followed for rational decision making. Are you together?
Yeah, I think Andy has a question.
Okay, can I ask? Hello.
Hello, Andy. I say I can't hear. I don't know whether I'm on mute. I think you can continue.
Okay, all right. So I also gave the definition of bureaucracy. So these terms are, can you mute the mic of, okay. All right. So I think these words, these terms are very important in public administration. You just have to know them offhand. What is bureaucracy? What is police? What is state? And what is transparency? If you know those areas, it will be also good for you. Then governance, it's also the system of overseeing and controlling something. But in this case, if it is a governance, a government is of controlling the resources so that they benefit the public. Then I also talked about public administration is the PLOC of government. So when you say the PLOC is this is an acronym for planning, leading, organizing, and controlling. So when I say it's the PLOC of government operations, it's the planning, leading, organizing, and controlling of government operations. That's what public administration is all about. So you can also check some other textbooks, what they also mean about public administration. So this is just a brief explanation of some of the important terms that we shall be encountering in this topic as we'll be going down. So, but the public administration itself has got its own roots. So the roots of public administration comprises 3 stages. There's also a question that you can also encounter on the roots of public administration. I think, let me just check down where the question is. This question is also frequently asked in many public administration question papers. Where is it? Yeah. So the possible question that can come with this regard is the evolution of public administration as a discipline can be divided into 3 stages. Briefly discuss the most important aspects of each stage. So this is the same as the roots of public administration. The evolution of public administration is just the same as the roots of public administration. So you might find a question asking you, briefly explain or discuss the roots of public administration. Or you might find a question which is saying, discuss the evolution of public administration. This is the same question. So don't be confused when you find a question which is asking you about the roots of public administration and the one that is asking you about the evolution of public administration. Is just the same question. So the public administration is said to have 3 stages. The first one is called the embryonic stage. The embryonic stage is a stage that was traced from back by philosophers. But the embryonic stage mainly was focused about the security of the state. It did not much focus about the requirement of the public. Though the first initial thing that caused the formation of the embryonic stage was the needs of the people in the state. But those who were the leaders in the embryonic stage, they thought that the state was the most important thing. So they wanted to secure the authority of the state and neglected the responsibility of ensuring that the public are catered for. So what you need to put in some of the points that you need to mention when you're explaining this embryonic stage is the need for civil servant, for law and order, the development of cameralism. This was the focus on economic power of state through growth. So the idea here of cameralism, there was that if the state grows its will, then the economy of the country will also develop. That was some of the ideas that were probed by the philosophers who came up with the embryonic stage. They said that if we are able to grow the state resources, we are able to grow the wealth of the nation, the economy will be strong. But this theory was also disputed by some. Even though some economists, some agreed, some did not agree. So when you're explaining, discussing embryonic stage, you need to point out, or you need to discuss. Some agreed, some opposed the idea. You can't just go on one-sided. Then also in this stage, there was the development of public administration as a distinct discipline. So this was to say, we need to separate public administration from the state. The state is to remain on itself, which was to say, that's why they were trying to secure the authority and power of the state. Then they say the public administration is on itself, but they regard this public administration as less effective or is less important. Then with time, there came von Stein, who also introduced public administration as a crucible of disciples. Then Woodrow Wilson, politics, public administration. Then there's what is called post-code, connection between politics and public administration. This is also, this abbreviation is also very important. We need also to know this, the meaning of this post-code. I'm trying to highlight it. Okay, can I highlight? Okay, it's fine. So then the second stage is bureaucratic stage. I think I explained a bit about bureaucratic stage and the meaning. Bureaucratic simply means that the authority to make decisions is placed in the hands of the state officials. These may be unelected state officials, but they have the authority to make those decisions. But remember, we are talking about the evolution of public administration. So this happened in 1945, post Second World War. Even though after the Second World War, 1945, there was a bit of stagnation in terms of development, because most of the economies were ailing due to the effects of the Second World War. But after 10 years, many countries began to develop and to come up with more strategies. So this is when also even though this idea of bureaucratic was discussed by Weber, Max Weber, I think it was 1880 something before, they started to bring this same idea again in post 1945. So they thought that bureaucratic stage, the idea that was probed by Max Weber was effective. So it was now being probed by America, because it was the one that was influencing this bureaucratic stage. So it was, like I said before, you can see here, it's increased use of the bureaucratic, which is the Weberian model. So they wanted to bring back the Weberian model, that the government is the one that is the mandate to make decisions on behalf of the public, even though some of them, the people that will be making decisions, are unelected officials. Then the last stage, this one spills to the current stage that we have right now of the public administration. The government started playing a role in business by regulating manufacturing products, working conditions, by providing welfare services during the decades following the Second World War. So here the government realized that we cannot keep on having the sole mandate of saying we are the ones who are the custodians of public administration. So they started to let the people manage the areas of public administration as a system through administration. So the model ensured the public employees kept the rules and regulation, thus ensuring that policies were executed as envisaged by the governing structures. Still, one thing of note in this case was that the government still had the reasonable authority and reasonable power to influence what could be done by the public employees, because the government is the one that crafts policies, that makes decisions, but the public employees are the ones that ensures or enforces that these regulations are being kept. So for the public administration to be effective, the public employees are the ones that they have the authority to do that. So the possible question that I've explained here was that that I pointed out. I've also explained that you can find the question which talks about the evolution or the roots of public administration question that you can find. Even if it is asking you to discuss about the roots of public administration, it's also discussing about it's also saying the evolution of public administration. Then there were certain approaches that are used in public administration. So the current is paradigmatic approach. It's a paradigm. So the paradigmatic approach, it is established that South Africa is a developmental state. So this is now some approaches that are now being used in public administration to see the development of the warfare. So the issue of South Africa being a developmental state is also an issue of debate. You'll find some questions that I can ask you. Is South Africa a developmental state or not? So a developmental state has got certain characteristics that define that this one is a developmental state. So a developmental state, actually, the characteristics, some of the characteristics of a developmental state is that the state is focusing on developing the nation and also alleviating the poverty of its people. Those are some of the characteristics that defines that this country is a developmental state. But South Africa, this is a debate whether South Africa is a developmental state or not. Why do I say that it's a debate that South Africa is a developmental state or not? Because some of the characteristics that are found in a developmental state are also found in South Africa. But some of the characteristics are also not present in South Africa. So when you are explaining a question that says, explain whether South Africa is a developmental state, we are going to explain two sides. First side, that supports the points that point out that South Africa wants to alleviate the poverty of the people in South Africa. But how are they trying to alleviate the poverty of South Africans? That's still a challenge because the poverty, inequality, and unemployment, like we mentioned earlier, in South Africa is still rising, and there is untold suffering in South Africa. So in some instances, it's a question where you explain two sides. To a greater extent, South Africa is a developmental state. To a less extent, South Africa is not a developmental state. So that's how we explain such a question that comes if South Africa is a developmental state. So according to the study of public administration, new sub-disciplines have developed to study emerging strengths in greater detail, including monitoring and evaluation, leadership, and governance. So on this issue of developmental state of South Africa, I also adopted a question. This one is also from the Bachelor of Public Administration. It's module Public Administration 1A, year 1, intake July 2020 semester. This one was an assignment, so I found that this was an assignment. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to highlight this so that you can see it. The question here was explain the concept of developmental state. I know as we shall be going with this module, Public Administration A, we shall explain again what is developmental state. It shall be explained in detail in the next topic that will be explained. But because these issues of developmental, this word developmental state was just picked up in part of our introduction. So I thought that it would be appropriate if we also explain what a developmental state is, so that we get an understanding of what a developmental state is. That even if we're going to do it in the next module, you have an appreciation of what a developmental state is. So according to my answer here, that a developmental state was the question was explain the concept of developmental state. A developmental state is characterized by having strong state intervention. So when it means state intervention, it means most of the duties, especially of public administration, they are done by the government. For example, the provision of electricity is done by the government. So the government is intervening in trying to provide services that are required by the public. Electricity, water, sanitation, waste removal, what else? Development of roads, infrastructure, and most of those things. So if you look at South Africa, those things the South African government is doing. So in that state, South Africa qualifies as a developmental state. Then the other part is as well as extensive regulation and planning. So it means the government is the one that also regulates what happens in that country and plans what the development, the national development goals that the South Africa brings. It means also it's a developmental state. This is to a greater extent. Then the term is subsequently been used to describe countries outside East Asia that satisfy the criteria of developmental state. So actually, the developmental state was an idea or a concept that was mainly used in Asia, particularly in China. This is where the developmental state came, the idea of developmental state came from in Japan. But because most of the countries outside Asia wanted, as they saw how those countries were developing, they wanted to adopt the same concept so that they can also develop. Then a developmental state tries to balance economic growth and social development. In this case, it means that the government will be trying to balance to ensure that the economy is stable, the economy does not collapse, but they also look at the social welfare of their people, social development. Here in South Africa, we have social grants that are given to people as examples. So South Africa qualifies in the instances of a developmental state. It uses state resources and state influence to attack poverty and expand economic opportunities. So the resources that are used to ensure that the country develops comes from the government, comes from the state. The one that funds infrastructure development projects like roads construction, like the Moloto road construction in Limpopo. Those are projects that the government is also funding, which means it's influencing to expand. But once the government is influencing growth of the economy, it's creating jobs, it's alleviating poverty, and it's also increasing the opportunities of the economy. In all countries, the state plays some role in shaping the structure and output of the economy. So this is just a snippet of what a developmental state is all about. Then I think I also think about there's another question that I also took from the okay. Sorry for the disturbance. I was hearing some noise that were coming. I don't know who was making that noise. Okay. So the other question that I also took from this, it's an assignment, was say define the concept state and list the characteristics of a state. So like we've defined earlier what a state is. Then the characteristics of a state. So the definition that I gave of a state comprises the characteristics of a state. So when you are giving a definition of a state, you are simply combining the characteristics of a state. We are simply combining the definition of a state. So a state, like we said, it's a sovereign entity, it's a sovereign country that have control an authority over a population territory, and that is also has a government. You see, so the characteristics of a state includes population, territory, sovereignty, recognition. So for a state to be considered a state, it needs to be recognized by other countries, by other nations, that this one is a state. So if it is not recognized, then it's not a state. But as long as it is recognized as a state, because it will have its soldiers, it will have its also people who protect its borders. It also have rules. It has laws, system of rules and laws. It is also geographically located in a certain place, in a certain area. Then that can be called a state. But as long as it does not satisfy the characteristics, the main four characteristics that we mentioned here, then it cannot be defined. But there are about 8 more characteristics that define a state. But the most important ones are the ones that I've listed here: sovereignty, territory, population, government, recognition. So this one I was just giving in response to this the current approach that we have right now. The other part of public administration. What's happening? See what we're supposed to be discussing. Okay, yeah, it's the locus and focus of public administration. So the locus and the focus of public administration is we are introducing. The locus simply means where it's the location of most of the public administration activities are being done. So you find here in South Africa, most of the public administration are done by departments that has been formed by the government. So we have many departments that were formed by the government, provincial departments, local government bodies. These are created for the purpose of implementing the policies that are designed by the government. So locus of public administration simply means the location of where the activities of public administration have been done. Then the focus of public administration means what is the responsibility of public administration? What is it? Why was it formed here in South Africa? Why is it needed? So it's needed so that it improves service delivery, it improves accountability, it improves economic empowerment, there is transparency in the services of in the distribution of service. So like we explained earlier about the way the transparency. What is transparency? Transparency simply means that all stakeholders know all the activities that's been done, and they also have confidence of what is being done. Then accountability simply means that the government is to be held responsible for the failures for it to deliver services to the people. For example, if the people are not happy with the transmission of electricity, they know that the government is the one that is responsible for electricity. They engage the government. Some even engage through strikes. So the government must be held responsible. That's the areas that we are going to be focused on public administration. So what are some possible questions that can arise from this? So the possible questions that can arise from this last part is you can be asked to define public administration. So we have already discussed what public administration is, of having public administration and the stages of public administration. Yeah. So I think for now that's what we had to discuss in terms of the introduction of public administration. I don't know if there are any questions. Hello. Hello.
Hi, Jacob.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. You're
Hello, how are
speaking
you?
to it's Zianda, ne?
Yeah.
When answering these questions, since public administration is all about theory, do we need to paraphrase them when answering for assignments or exams, or we just take it as it is from the book?
No, you should not take it as it is from the book. You need to paraphrase. You need to write it in your own words. Because when you write it in your own words, you are expressing that you understood the concept, you understood what was being said. So you should not take it exactly as it is from the start guide or from the book, but you explain it in your own way. So this is why it is important that you read, then you write in your own way. You understand the concept, then you write in your own way. Hello? Sianda?
Thank you,
Hello?
Jacob. It's understood.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just want to add on that. If you take exactly from the book or from internet, from any source, your answer is called, it is plagiarism. It's plagiarized from ABCD source. So you automatically fail. Because I think there's a certain plagiarism percentage you are allowed to reach. So if you exceed that that percentage, I think they'll disqualify you.
Okay.
So I think, so are you done, Mr. Jacob? Mr.